check out our streaming schedule for this week. We've got tons of content in terms of the NFL and college football, as we're going live just about every single day this week. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment where we go live. And now, on with our feature presentation. I don't know what it is about games between the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks, but for whatever reason, they always seem to involve some sort of, shall we say, atrocious officiating and some blown calls that make you question your sanity and whether the referees have any idea as to what they're doing. Part of what makes Packers-Seahawks such a bizarre rivalry is the fact that these games are always crazy for the dumbest reasons, thanks to a party that, in theory, shouldn't interfere with the game, but always finds a way to. One notable example of that was what happened on Monday Night Football in 2006. It's third down. The Seahawks have the ball up by 3 points, and Matt Hasselbeck throws an incomplete pass, which, in theory, should bring up fourth down. But nope, we've got to call roughing the passer on Colin Jenkins for, I don't even know. How is this roughing? In what world is this roughing the passer? Didn't grab him by the horse collar, didn't throw him to the ground or land on top of him, even if that rule wasn't a thing in 2006. Didn't hit him late, didn't hit him too hard. Roughing the passer on Colin Jenkins for playing defense, I suppose. Instead of punting the ball away, the Seahawks got to keep their drive alive, and it culminated in them scoring, winning the game 34-24. That was a bad call. And 6 years later, on Monday Night Football, you had maybe the most infamous blown call in the history of the NFL, as you had the Fail Mary. I don't think this play needs any introduction. You know what happens here. What should have been an interception ends up being ruled a touchdown because Golden Tate had simultaneous possession of the football. And I use simultaneous in quotes because he had about as much possession of the football as Patrick Star had possession of the harpoon from Jellyfish the movie. The call was so bad that not only did it give the Seahawks the walk-off win and directly impact the seeding for the 2012 playoffs, but led to such outrage and criticism that the referee lockout ended immediately afterward, because the NFL knew that they could not go another week having replacement officials. Packers-Seahawks games are always these wacky endeavors that find a way to live on in NFL history, even if it's not necessarily for the right reasons. And speaking of NFL history, if you want to learn more about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, with stories like the one you're going to hear in today's video, then this is the place for you. Because we talk about all things NFL history all the time with a new video and a new live stream every single day, including tonight's Seahawks-Packers game. We'll be streaming that one on Sunday Night Football if you're watching as of this video getting released. So if you like that sort of stuff and want to learn more, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Thanks in advance for your support as we try and hit 70,000 subscribers. However, as bad as those two calls were, and in no way whatsoever am I defending those atrocities or downplaying how bad they were, at least those calls in this rivalry right here were subjective calls. Roughing the passer is when a quarterback gets hit late, and technically, Matt Hasselbeck was hit late, even if that call was complete and utter crap. Simultaneous possession is on a spectrum, and while Golden Tate obviously did not have possession of the ball, at least he was touching it, at least he had some possession. Plus, those guys weren't real referees. The call in the Packers-Seahawks game we're going to talk about today, it's a call you've never seen before, and it's a call that is objectively wrong. No subjectivity, no gray area, no nothing. This is a blown call so bad that I genuinely can't believe it happened. And 40 years later, especially with the Packers and Seahawks playing tonight, if you're watching as of this video being released, it deserves a deep dive today. Because this is a call that genuinely, I kid you not, could not happen in 2024. That's how bad it is. Because this is the story behind the worst blown call in the history of the Packers-Seahawks rivalry from an objective standpoint. Or I guess, the original Fail Mary if you want to call it that. This is the story of one of the most insane and absurd moments of the Packers-Seahawks rivalry that you've never heard of. Before I talk about the actual incident in question and just how bad the blown call was, we need some context to understand the importance of this game and how the game itself was going. It's October 21st, 1984. It's week 8 of the NFL season. and we find ourselves at Milwaukee County Stadium for this interconference battle between the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. Remember that the Seahawks were in the AFC back then. On paper, this seems like a giant mismatch. The Packers are the worst team in the NFC, sitting at 1-6 after 6 straight losses, with the worst point differential and the worst offense in the conference. While the Seahawks, coming off of an appearance in the AFC Championship the year before, are picking up right where they left off in 1984. And they find themselves at 5-2 thanks to the number 2 offense of the conference, as they're coming off of a big, come-from-behind victory against the winless Buffalo Bills the previous week. Having said that, even though the Packers are underdogs for this one, any given Sunday, you never know in this league, you just never know. The Packers are going to need some help if they're going to win for the first time since the opening week of the season. But they've got a chance, so long as they don't get screwed by the officials. As we're about to find out, well, you'll see. But so far in this one, the Seahawks seemed as though they were in control. By this point in the contest, midway through the third quarter, the Seahawks led at 27-17, with the Seahawks taking that 2-score lead after this 25-yard touchdown pass from Dave Craig to Darrell Turner. The Seahawks trailed 17-7 at the end of the first quarter, but 20 straight points by the visitors completely flipped the game on its head. By the time this game was done, Craig would have over 300 yards passing, and the Packers would have no answers for the incomparable Steve Largent, who finished the game with 7 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. However, despite some bad turnovers by Green Bay, as they turned it over 3 times on 3 interceptions by Lynn Dickey, the story of this game was, undoubtedly, the officiating. Holy crap, the officiating. There were 28 penalties called throughout the contest for a combined 235 yards. 28 penalties, 235 yards, each team having more than 10 penalties and more than 100 yards of flags. You want to talk about a game where the referees dictated the flow? That was this game, as flags were flying with the same frequency that fireworks fly with on the 4th of July. There were so many flags that both sides felt as though they got hosed, with Seahawks quarterback Dave Craig saying after the game, quite bluntly, "My voice is sore from yelling at the referee. There were some touching moments between me and the ref." Seahawks safety John Harris said, "I have a lot I'd love to say about it, but I don't have enough money to say it. I think the league will see some very interesting calls when it sees the films of the game." One writer called the game an embarrassment to professional football. And when 28 penalties get called, including some that were highly questionable and slowed the game down considerably, it's not hard to see why he'd feel that way. However, in this game of awful officiating, it was midway through the third quarter when one of the most inexplicable calls you'll ever see happen. It's a call that's not even subjective or ticky-tack or close or anything like that. It's a call so blatantly wrong that I genuinely have not seen it happen at another NFL game since, and it would not happen today. The Packers have the ball after that aforementioned Darrell Turner touchdown, and on second down, Lynn Dickey gets thrown to the ground by Joe Nash, who was so good in 1984 that he would be named a Pro Bowler and an AP First Team All-Pro. It should be 3rd and long, right? Well, no, because the Seahawks get called for defensive holding. It happens somewhere in the secondary, and there's no replay of it happening, but the Seahawks got called for that penalty, so the Packers get new life as a result. Now, let's take a look at the rule book for defensive holding, as shown in Rule 8, Section 4, Article 6. I don't really care about what the rule says when it comes to what defensive holding is, since it's kind of a moot point. There is no replay on this play, so we don't really know what specifically linebacker Bruce Schultz did to draw the penalty. However, let's look at how such a penalty is enforced. If there's holding on the defense, it's a 5-yard penalty from the original line of scrimmage. In other words, if the play was at your own 20-yard line and there's defensive holding, it's a 5-yard penalty that's moved up to the 25. That is the rule today, and that was the rule back in 1984. Defensive holding carried a 5-yard penalty. Now, I'm going to play for you, unedited, what happened from the time the penalty was called to the time of the very next play. See if you notice something off about the situation. See if you notice something that doesn't quite seem right.
Packer 18-yard line. Dickey with the problem, and Dickey goes down. Sacked by the middle guard, so the Boston College Eagle has landed.
Correct. Joe Nash. Got a flag on the play, too. It's against Seattle.
One guy's not too pleased is Jacob Green of the Seahawks. Let's see what the official call is.
The flag is thrown down the field. Even though the ball was not thrown, there may have been some illegal holding down.
Defensive holding, number 58. First down.
They called it on linebacker Bruce Schultz. We pause briefly for station identification. This is the NBC Television Network.
WLUK 11 Green Bay.
10:23 to play in the third quarter at Milwaukee. Seattle, trailing 17-7, has now rallied to take a 27-17 lead over the Green Bay Packers. The Pack has the ball. Don Quickie with Bob Trumpy. Line of scrimmage is the 18-yard line. First and 10, Green Bay. Packers in need of a big play. Dickey might be pitching.
Did you catch it? Did you see what was wrong? Well, if you missed it and are wondering what the heck you're supposed to be looking at, let's go back to the play where the defensive holding got called. The holding got called on a play where the line of scrimmage was the 18. So, 5-yard penalty to move it up to the 23, right? Well, after the officials called holding, look at where the next play happened. It happened at, you guessed it, the 18-yard line. The officials never actually moved the line of scrimmage up. They never moved the ball. So even despite the 5-yard penalty, the Packers were still starting this new sequence inside their own 20. They were starting at the 18-yard line. See what I mean when I say that this isn't a subjective thing or a bang-bang decision that an official can sometimes get wrong? This was the officials calling a penalty, having a minute in between the plays, and never moving the ball up, meaning that the penalty was literally meaningless. It was a 0-yard penalty. It should have been a 5-yard penalty, but nope, 0 yards. The ball was placed at the exact same yard line because of reasons beyond my understanding and comprehension. And just in case that you think this was some weird quirk, that the rules were different back then, or there was something that was offsetting and something should have applied that made this make sense, nope. One writer noticed the error too, and pointed it out the following day. Because the theme of this game, like I said before, was atrocious officiating all around. As he said, you figure it out. The Packers have the ball in their own 18 in the third quarter when officials tagged Seattle outside linebacker Bruce Schultz for a holding penalty. The ball was spotted back on the 18. That's right, no yardage was walked off. Oh, and to add insult to injury, the Packers ended up punting on the drive and ended up losing the game by a final score of 30-24. Not saying they would have won or things would have been different if the correct yardage was marked off, but it definitely didn't help their cause. You can clearly see that. It's almost like if I played Kevin Durant in a one-on-one game of basketball. There's a referee officiating this game, my arm gets hit on a shot, and instead of going to the line, the referee says that it happened on the floor. Do I win the game if the refs get the call right? No. Did that blown call hurt my chances? Whatever chances I had at winning? Absolutely. As for what happened after the game between these two teams behind me right here, the Seattle Seahawks would have a strong campaign. They would go 6-2 over the final 8 games and would end the season with a 12-4 record, making the playoffs for the second straight season and for the second time in franchise history. And the Green Bay Packers, despite their 1-7 start after this loss, would have a phenomenal second-half turnaround and would almost pull off one of the greatest single-season turnarounds in NFL history, as they went from 1-7 to 8-8, going 7-1 over the final 8 games of the season, narrowly missing the playoffs by just 1 game. Maybe if this game took place in the second half of the season, when the Packers were finding their groove and their rhythm, the result is different. Maybe if this game was officiated confidently, this game would be different. Who's to say? All I know is this much. When 250 yards of penalties are being called, something is really, really wrong. Today, a situation like what we saw in 1984 would not be possible. At least, you would hope not. We've got expedited review, and we've got New York watching all the games. So if a referee didn't mark off the yardage for a penalty for some unknown reason because they forgot to do their job, that would be fixed immediately. Amazingly enough, and I cannot believe this, no official was punished for this mistake, and things went on as normal. There were no suspensions, were no fines for the officials, no one got fired. Everything was the status quo afterwards, and this crew worked the following week in the game between the Steelers and the 49ers. The referee in this game, for those wondering, was Bob Frederick, number 71. And if that name sounds familiar, Frederick was also the referee for the infamous snowplow game in 1982 between the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. So he always seemed to be involved in some sort of controversy, even if he would officiate for a few more years after that until 1987. And it's easy to see why this call was forgotten 40 years later, seeing as this was a 5-yard difference. And unlike the other Seahawks-Packers games that took place on national television in front of the entire country on Monday Night Football in the fourth quarter, this was a regional early game with a call in the third quarter involving a one-win team at the time. But it doesn't make the call any less excusable or crazy, especially seeing as there were no punishments issued afterwards for a call that was objectively wrong and for something that no referee in the right mind would do besides the crew working this game. Like I said, Packers-Seahawks games always descend into madness one way or another. And this was another prime example of that, even if it's been lost throughout NFL history. Because on this October day in 1984, according to girl math, or I guess ref math, a 5-yard penalty doesn't actually mean 5 yards. 5 equals 0. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.